I'm going to declare a quorum. I'm going to call the City of Groton Committee of the Whole meeting for Monday, November 27, 2017 to order. Clerk Patrick, will you please call the roll?
Present are Mayor Keith Hedrick, Deputy Mayor Lawrence Garish, Councilors Joe Rusk, Jamal Beckford, Stephen Sheffield, Conrad Heath, Finance Director Ron Newhouse, Clerk Deborah Patrick, and excused is Councilor Rashad Carter.
Okay, thank you. All right, the first thing that we're going to discuss today is the police department presentations, the police department and the police cadet program. I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce Officer Alito to the council and the program that she has championed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and members of the community. Can I take this off? Okay. I have with me today several members of our newly formed cadet program. Our program is designed for youth within our community between the ages of 13 and 20. Actually, we're cutting it off at 20. They must be in the 8th grade, so if there's anybody out there watching, 8th graders that are at least 13 years old are welcome into our program. What we do is we teach the youth about the police, all aspects of police work. They role play as police officers, they learn search and seizure, they learn basic patrol procedures, any type of incidents that we get involved in as police officers, they role play and they get that learning experience. Part of our function is to give them some leadership skills and to interact them with not only myself and Officer Harris, who is assisting me, but so that they can meet the other officers in the department and participate with other youth groups. There are cadets and explorers throughout the state of Connecticut and Rhode Island and Massachusetts. We have an opportunity in the summertime. There is a week-long cadet academy specifically for these youth. So we're hoping to be able to raise some money at some point in order to get these kids up there. It's a valuable experience. They stay up there. It's at the University of Hartford. But Officer Harris and I have been dedicated to this program now since March. I think we started it in March, recruited right out of our middle school. We wanted to try to get the youth before they went into the high school. And we're attempting to recruit other youth at this time. So we do have several openings if anyone out there is interested in the program. Okay. We do have at least 2 of the members are city residents. 2 of the other members are within the town, but they came from our school systems. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about the program? Would you like to say something how you like the program? Anything? That's okay. I don't want to put you on the spot, okay? But I thank you for the opportunity.
Deputy Mayor Garish.
I was wondering if any of the cadets have expressed a long-range plan as far as becoming police officers.
Anyone out of this particular group wanted to be police officers? Actually, well, let me just tell you, this is Zay. He is a city resident. He actually had no interest in the program initially until he came to our first meeting, and he's been a dedicated participant ever since. You know, I think a lot of the youth don't know what we do, what we're about, and some may be intimidated by us. And what we get out of this group is youth who are going to be out in the community. The other kids are going to see these youth and want to participate, and they're closer to the age of these kids, so they don't see them as that authority figure as they may see us, and so it helps us to interact with the other youth. Okay. Yes?
One other question. What kind of exposure are you giving them to the actual work of the, do they ride with any of the officers at any time, or? At
this particular time, they are not riding. I'd like to be able to implement it. However, right now our policy says I believe our policy says that riders have to be either 18 or 21. But it can be modified at some other time to specifically include our program. but right now we've done, we've gone over some search and seizure, some probable cause, some of the more common crimes that we've been experiencing. And they've done handcuffing, and we've actually had a few crime scenes that they've investigated. So we've done quite a few things. We're looking forward to getting them involved in possibly with East Lyme is our closest cadet program that we have here, so we'd like to be able to invite East Lyme to our community and maybe go and assist East Lyme in their program as well.
Well, I commend you for your work, because I think that's a great thing to expose young people, and I would like it if there was 25 of them standing there. I think it's a great thing. That
I'd like it if there were at least 15. Sometimes it can get a little overwhelming with too many kids, but yes, I'd like to see the program grow. It's a very new program here, and we had 2 other members. One had moved away. Another one had a lot of stuff in school, and so we're starting our new recruitment drive. Okay, and we'll be going, actually the youth wanted to go into the school when they have I think they have a half a day or something, and they'll help to recruit. So it's not just the police officers talking to the youth and saying, come join our program. Now it's the youth being viewed and saying, come and join our program. So.
Well, thank you for all you do.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Councilor
Yes.
Sheffield?
How long do they serve in the program once they're, how long, can they go as long as they want till aged, was it 20, I guess?
Yes, they can. Yes.
Okay.
They can go until they age out. Okay.
Okay.
And it's been my experience that, and sometimes it's cyclical. They may have, sometimes kids get involved in some sports that take them out of the program, but typically a lot of the kids stay. And some go on. I have run a similar program before, and I've had several youth go into law enforcement. But it's the skills we teach are not just for police officers. We're trying to teach them the leadership, teamwork, and things like that, so that it will benefit them in any job. We have them. We'll be doing some promotions as we go along, so they'll have to go through a promotional process, an interview process, which will help them, when they go to get any type of job. So it's very good. Yes?
I don't want to monopolize it, but
That's okay.
if someone out there was interested in joining the program, how should they go about applying?
Oh, excellent question. Thank you very much for bringing that up. Okay, well, the first thing is you can contact me, Officer Lito or Officer Harris at the City of Groton Police Department, 860-445-2451. We do have our next regular scheduled meeting is this Wednesday at 6 o'clock. Our meetings are held every other Wednesday, and they're 2 hours from 6 to 8 in order to accommodate, it accommodates most families. It's not too many meetings for them. And then we do participate in the community service. We've been involved in the Trick or Trunk, City Day. We're going to be helping with the Christmas party, anything that, and this weekend, don't forget about the Stuff a Cruiser. Okay, we'll be out for that as well. Okay? Anything else? Yes.
How many hours per week or per month do they need to commit to the program?
At least the 4 hours for the 2 meetings. Okay, we do have whatever community events come up. Some will be required that they attend. Others are just optional. If they can make it, we try to accommodate their schedules, because some of the kids have other activities that they are involved in. Okay, but it's typically a 2-hour meeting every other week. Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much.
All right,
And
you're
thank you for
welcome.
what
Thank
do.
you very much too.
Cadets, thank you for doing what you're doing. Okay, let's see. Let's go to item 661, gap pay. Sue, if I could get you to come up. I think everyone knows Sue Blanchett. She is the IT director.
Good evening.
I think you have the memorandum. I received a memorandum. It says, per City of Groton Ordinance 165, written notification is hereby given to review the gap pay for Donald E. Niles in accordance with orders MM-7143-00105 Alpha 01 dated August 4th, 2017. The extension of his orders will result in an additional 129 days of gap pay beyond what was previously approved for gap pay extension by the City Council on April 17th, 2017 under Resolution R-176-4-80. Okay. Zoo, if you'd like to give us some background.
To bring you up to speed on this particular deployment, he was originally deployed March 2015 for a period not to exceed 500 days. Prior to the end of that, in February 2016, he was placed on medical hold, still active duty, but medical hold. And since then, we've been through a sequence of extensions, all of which were active duty medical hold. The most recent one expired September 17th, 2017. And the current orders that are under review right now are to extend his term of active duty medical hold to March 15th, 2018.
And the cost of extending the gap pay would be $9,143.52.
For the period from September 17th through March 15th.
Let me see what was
Down
given to
here.
you guys. Did you guys
Oh, I see it.
Okay, it's in the memorandum. Okay, let me make sure you guys are on the same page. I am. If you go to the memorandum to our UHAS Finance Director and our G'day Director of Utilities with attachment, CCD Niles from Sue Blanchett, General Manager of IT. And then at the next to the last paragraph, but the last full paragraph gives the amount $9,143.52. The challenge that we have is that we're approaching 3 years, is that correct?
This extends him to a full 3 years, yes.
This will extend him to a full 3 years. As a result of USERRA, we have to, if once he comes off of active duty, we have to offer him the position right now. He is on, why is he on active duty still?
Medical hold.
Okay, so he's on medical hold. We don't know why, we don't know what for, and we don't know for how long, because all that's protected. Currently, Sue has his full salary set aside for in the event that he comes back. It has been 3 years, and there are people that are having to do things that he would normally do was, if he were here. But on the business side, the challenge is if you hire somebody else to come in, and then once he gets returned back, then now what do you do? Right? Because we are obligated to retain, we are obligated to give him a position, same salary. There's no obligation to give him the same job description. Is that correct?
Correct, same or similar.
Same or similar. So that's, one of the challenges there.
Do you need that moved?
Well, at some point, we'll need it moved, but I want to get a little more discussion if you guys have any on this. Because you will, once it will get moved, and then you guys will have action on December 4th, whether or not you want to approve this. But typically, during the committee of the whole is where we discuss, debate, deliberate the issues. Are there any questions for Sue, Councilor Rusk?
Just for clarification, our gap pay is to pay the difference between what he's receiving from the military and what he typically would be receiving here. Is that correct?
Yes, it's the difference between his City of Groton salary and his military pay,
Okay.
based on the military pay scales for his rank and years of service.
And I know we've extended this multiple times. What does the original statute say about how we handle gap pay?
It's actually a city ordinance, or I'm sorry, resolution.
Okay.
Let me get it right. City Ordinance 165, which makes the determination on gap pay. Prior to that, there was an ordinance in place on gap pay, which extended for a period of 180 days, regardless of the term of deployment. That was replaced in 2006 by Ordinance 165, and in that ordinance, it covers the opportunity for the city council to extend, but it doesn't give, it's not clear in the language of the extension. It does say 1 year on a case-by-case basis, but beyond that period of time, I don't think anyone anticipated an extension to this degree.
Right, it's the last attachment that you guys have in your packet regarding this. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It says, whereas C, the city council reserves the right to extend gap pay beyond the 1-year period as defined in section B of this ordinance upon review and on a case-by-case basis should the period of such call-up to active duty extend beyond 1 year. Written notification will be made to the city council by the City of Groton Finance Director and the department head of the employee on active duty not less than 30 days in advance of the end of the initial 1-year period. So does that address,
Yes.
I mean, it's kind of clear. It does not give you a limitation on how long this could go. It's up to the council on a case-by-case basis. Yeah, Councilor Sheffield.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Does this need to be, this position need to be filled as far as temporary, to which, you know, we could be fully staffed in that area until this soldier comes back from duty?
There
Could we-
are, prior to his departure, we reallocated a number of his tasks. Some of them went to other members of the department, some of them went to me. There are items that are clearly not being accomplished simply because of the lack of staffing. However, the challenge of bringing someone in on a temporary basis, let's assume that this is the last 6 months and that he would be returning shortly thereafter. In order to get someone to ramp up to the level that would be required in order to fulfill his duties, it would take greater than 6 months to accomplish that, and they would have to go through a high level of security clearance in order to be able to perform those functions. So it would be very difficult to fill that position on a temporary basis.
What about in terms of salary? You wouldn't probably pay a temp as high a salary as you would as a full-time employee. Would that, you know, sort of lessen the burden, if you will, as far as the amount that you would have to pay that temporary person? Since you're lowering the expectation, the threshold more than the full-time.
Certainly, but it would be paying a person to not perform his duties, not perform Mr. Niles' duties, while others of us are. And it would become a very, it almost become a difficult situation to justify that additional expense for the temp to perform a lesser duty when temps are honestly quite expensive if you get them through an agency especially. They can be quite expensive. It's probably preferred that we take on the extra duties and do as much as we can. I believe it's called adapt and overcome. So that's what we're doing at this point.
Okay, anything else?
Mhm.
Councilor Heath?
Well, I don't think the military gives the medical stay lightly. So if I'm understanding this right, we would be deciding on whether we want to extend the gap pay for another period of time and then waiting for that period of time to expire before we find out if we have to extend it again. And again, there's not necessarily any end point. So it's difficult to make the decision, being that you want to support your soldier, but at the same time,
You don't know what the medical, if he's even going to come back.
Right.
It's could be a situation where he doesn't come back to Groton Utility.
That is the challenge. Because you got the business side, and then you got the humanitarian side of this. And that is the challenge that is before you, that will be before you on the 4th.
So then just one more question real quick, sorry. If we were to replace him right now, in the future, say 120 days, 3 years, whenever he comes back, we would just need to be prepared to offer him a full-time job that's similar or the same or similar? And is that something that could be arranged? So we don't do the gap pay, we, let him go basically. And then when he's ready to come back, you bring him back. That's the decision that we're facing right now.
Councilor Rusk.
All right. I'm sorry, Councilor Sheffield had his hand up first.
Councilor Sheffield.
What does federal law say on that regarding? Is there anything on the federal side that would supersede a city ordinance regarding a he would be a veteran, if you will, to...
The terms of USERRA, which cover employees that are called to duty, does not provide for a differential impact. There is no federal regulation that states that you're required to do that. It does state reinstatement requirements, providing a position, same or similar, duties, levels of responsibility, supervisory, there's a full paragraph about how that's termed, and also how benefits are administered during that period of time. An example, if the individual was a member of a collective bargaining agreement and all members of the collective bargaining agreement received a 2% pay increase on January 1st, that individual would have to receive that same pay increment on January 1st, regardless of whether or not they were here, because it has to be consistent throughout the entire group. Same goes for other benefits as well. What the ordinance doesn't address is the pension contribution, and that was brought up back in 2006. What's been done during this period of deployment and prior periods of deployment is his medical contribution, it's not copay, contribution, his medical was deducted from his gap pay to ensure that his medical coverage continued.
Councilor Rusk.
Just for clarification, because I missed it in the beginning, you said gap pay is not required?
Gap pay is not required under federal law.
Thank you. And to question something that Councilor Heed mentioned, you were talking about gap pay and if we would hire somebody new. Those are two mutually exclusive items, correct?
Correct.
So if we stopped the gap pay, it does not mean that we're
He'd
going
still
to
have a job.
hire somebody. He would still,
Have
well,
a job ready for him.
he would still have, well, we have to offer him a position. It doesn't have to be this one. But just because we stop gap pay doesn't mean that we are going to fill this position, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure everything's on the table.
That wouldn't necessarily be correct, because you could, correct me if I'm wrong, because you could fill a position, but as long as he still had a position when he came back.
Correct.
That's correct, yeah.
He has the right of reinstatement.
Yeah.
But, okay, I think for clarification, the issue was, is the filling of the position and the gap pay, are those tied together? And the answer is no, they are mutually
Oh, I
exclusive.
didn't take it at that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Would you like to make,
Yeah, well,
I'll go ahead and
another
have your
question.
comment.
Because we're being asked to extend this gap, what kind of communications are there available? I know there's laws that regulate how much information can be given, but do they provide us with any indication at all as to the extent of his disability?
Even if they had, I obviously couldn't disclose it in a public space, because that would be infringement on his medical privacy. However, I do not have that information. As you can tell from the memo from October 24th, it's been extended in increments based on what I assume is his recovery from whatever might have occurred during his active duty.
And I know we have extended it already, at least once. And I just feel that if we're being asked to extend it again, it would seem to me that there should be some indication by the military officials or the individual himself that would give us a little bit more information so that we could make a fair and intelligent decision on it.
Understood. The extent of information that I have from the military are his orders and simply stated that he is on medical hold. They don't state anything further than that.
But would they if we approached them?
I would think, I know there was a previous request made by the former HR director to the military in a confirmation of his medical status. I would assume that that's possible with the current HR director, that she could be in contact with the military. I don't know how much information they'll divulge or how much she would be able to divulge to you, simply because it's a medical issue.
Councilor
Yeah, and just the history of myself and then all the work, my history of work and hazardous duty employment and whatnot. You can not ask for medical records, but also request to see if somebody's possibly going to be or in the near future fit for duty to work. That's two different questions. Without getting into their history, are they going to be fit to do fit? Possibly when they return, are they going to be fit for duty? You know, I think that can answer questions without getting into his. You know,
I think that I mean, and I certainly have no idea what his condition is. I don't even know the individual, but I do know that, you know, if it was a permanent disability, then maybe you should be looking at a government disability rather than continue on as an absent employee here. And I know everybody here would want to be fair and respectful and appreciative to any of our military people, but it just seems that we should have a little bit more information to help us make that decision.
Certainly. And should the military be making that decision, if they were in that process now, if they were considering that form of solution as far as his military service is concerned, that doesn't necessarily mean that he would not be able to perform his duties and functions here. So there are, again, separate things to consider. He may not be able to perform the duties and functions of his military requirements, but could certainly perform here with reasonable accommodation if necessary.
So does the council want me to have the Human Resources Director reach out to the command? And if so, what information would you like me to obtain? Councilor Sheffield?
Will we need to revisit this beyond the 1 year of March? I mean, do you anticipate
Well,
this?
but they only give him, I mean, we got the extension orders
Well, I'm
that
sure.
take us to March.
Well, I'm thinking beyond that, looking ahead, do they anticipate this extension, you know,
Again,
again?
I
yeah.
think to Councilor Carter's point, will he be fit for duty when or will he be fit to return to duty?
Okay, so we will need to,
However you word
so
that.
fit for duty, we're gonna need to, you have a PD, so I'll provide, HR can get the position description. So fit for duty, do they anticipate further extension? So what I have so far is do they anticipate further extension and fit for duty under the position description for the current job, the job that he vacated. Okay, anything else? Okay, I was originally going to ask for a motion to move this to 12-4, but I don't think I'm going to have the information in that quickly. Do you think we can get it in a week?
I have no idea how difficult
I
it
mean,
would be.
we haven't, it's been a while since we've asked.
I do have a contact liaison for him, so I should
Okay,
be able to
then we can contact
get a response, or
Okay.
give that to the
Okay.
HR director to get a response.
Councilor Russ.
I think we could move it to the 4th, and then if we don't have the information, then we
Okay.
can hold off. So I make a motion, we move it to the December 4th.
I'll second
Meeting?
that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Councilor
Yeah,
Sheffield?
what's the expiration of the current gap date?
The gap that had been previously approved expired September 17th, 2017.
Oh, so it's already been,
So, yes, so it has already lapsed.
oh, okay. Yeah, we'll go ahead.
We don't typically get the orders in a timely manner.
Okay.
He doesn't typically get them in a timely manner, so as soon as he gets them, he forwards them. So right now, there's no gap pay, and insurance contributions have lapsed. Coverage has not lapsed? I can't answer those questions, I don't know. He's covered, but his contribution has lapsed.
Councilor Sheffield?
So if we give that extension, things will be retroactive and he'll be able to receive those contributions again?
Yes, and the city will recover those contributions.
Councilor Russ?
I don't know if you can answer this question, but does he have family, so that if like his medical benefits got taken away, that would be more significant, I guess, than if he's just active duty?
I don't know his coverage, if he's family or single coverage. I don't have an answer for that.
And I don't know if we can get that information. I just, no.
Do you talking about here or with military?
Here.
Can we
Because if-
find out
I mean,
if he's single coverage or
you're saying he
family?
hasn't.
Okay, I'll find that out.
I think so. He wouldn't have to take family coverage.
Or
in the
family.
military.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries unanimous. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, 646, disposition of Groton Estates property. Barbara, if I could get you to come up and help guide us through this one. Okay, this is for, if you guys remember, we had two properties that are landlocked within Groton Estates. Groton Estates originally came to us. They wanted to purchase those properties. They said, we have an assessment of $7,000. We went off, the real estate committee met, and then we went off and had an appraisal done. And do you have your letter? Okay, you have a letter in front of you. Two properties are currently assessed for $62,160 based on a market valuation of $88,800. The city also contracted for an independent appraisal, which resulted in an as-is market value of the fee simple estate and the appraised property of $45,000. The challenge is it's more than $10,000, and so that forces us back in to get us to. We have an ordinance 148 concerning the purchasing and sale of real property for the city of Groton. There's a section here that talks about if the fair market value of the property is $10,000 or more is determined by the town of Groton's last evaluation, then the property shall be advertised for bid and disposed of as provided and other provisions of this ordinance pertaining to the purchases. The challenge with this is landlocked, and really these guys are the only ones that could really benefit from it or use it based on the provisions, deed restrictions that are attached to it. And so what I would like to do is to get your permission to allow me to deviate from this ordinance and negotiate directly with these guys for a value of that property. It's not going to be $7,000, but it's probably not going to be $80,000 either. It's somewhere reasonable. And the part of the deed restrictions is that they can only use it for recreation, and they're looking to build a rec center there. Right now, if you go into Groton Estates and you go to this property, you'll see there's a swing set, some other open space that's being used for recreation activity for children. So that's what this motion in a nutshell is all about. Is that accurate?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a very unique parcel. It's definitely worth more than $10,000, so the competitive bidding and sale process should apply. However, it's not on the outskirts and abuts another large parcel. It is right smack in the middle of Groton Estates. And the Planning and Zoning Commission, when they approved Groton Estates back in the 70s, part of that zone requires open space for playground and open and recreation purposes. So we're not going to, the Planning and Zoning Commission would never allow them to build another building with units in it that they're going to make a profit from and then provide their tenants with no open space or recreation space. So this is a kind of a middle ground between those two ends. But it could be used as a vacant parcel for somebody to build a piece of property on if they wanted to bid competitively for it. So you can't say that you can't use it for building a new construction of a building on that site. However, for all intents and purposes, being centered where it is, it's highly unlikely it would have a whole lot of value outside of the current owners of Groton Estates.
Comments? Councilor Rusk?
So with planning and zoning, really, with the way it's zoned right now, somebody couldn't build a house there, correct?
Yes, they could.
They could. I thought there was
If we
something.
sold, if they maintain it, if we sell it out from under them, we have relinquished our right to require the parks, the recreation and playground component of it.
Okay.
Because that's a requirement of that zone. If we were to take it, and we own it, they don't own it. So if we were to take it out from under them, taking away that ability to provide that element and meet the zoning requirements, that's on us. That's not their fault.
Okay.
So if we wanted to do that and sell it for $100,000 and somebody could build a 3-story single-family home there if they wanted to. And if it met all the requirements and all our zoning requirements and the setbacks and all that kind of stuff, they could do that.
But if we sell it to them, we can put on the restrictions that it has to be
Yes.
maintained in some way, shape, or form as recreation, even if
Correct.
it's a building. They can put a
Correct.
building there.
As
Okay.
long, they can put a building there as long as a portion of that building remains available as a recreation facility. I think they're planning on putting like a gym and something like that in there.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Garrish.
What about the assessed value as far as tax purposes? Obviously, we're getting no tax from it
Correct.
currently because we own it. Has that been figured at all? What kind of money it would generate as an additional tax?
If they take it over, they will be taxed at the going rate of their property. The assessor will come through and value it that. This is valued higher than it's worth because it helps our grand list, and the assessor wants to help the grand list. But that is not what it would be assessed at if it was a single-family home, for example. It's not going to generate a
No, but my
huge amount of
question,
taxes.
What I'm coming at was that we get nothing from it now.
Correct.
But we would pick up something.
Yes,
Sure.
regardless of how you dispose of it, once it's in private hands, you're going to generate taxes on that
Right.
property.
In addition, if it goes to this group, then they're going to make improvements to this property, meaning the building. And that's going to further raise the grand list value, the value of the property, therefore increase the grand list and taxes to us and to the town.
And we also, I know there's some playground equipment there, but it might relieve us of some liability as well.
Correct. That playground equipment is way out of date and should not be utilized. It's not safe. No.
Councilor Reed?
So as I understand it, if we sell the property to Groton Estates, it becomes a taxable property because it's not written that, or it doesn't seem to be written that way in the information. So I understood that all of Groton Estates was tax exempt. That's not the case.
No.
Correct.
No.
Okay, so you A, sell the property, B, you collect taxes on it.
Right. Yeah, Groton Estates is not, they're not tax exempt.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I need a motion to move this to the council meeting at 12:04.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, where are we? That takes us to, thank you, Barbara. That leads us to 610, which is the sewer use feasibility study presentation by Utilities Director Gaudet. I've also asked him to give a presentation on the Utilities Commission meetings and CMEC. So we'll cover several things with this presentation.
You too?
Me too. I was like, are these the same?
Did everybody get their,
Because my old eyes going.
What first?
again?
You gotta harness me in. What first? You want me to just talk about stuff, or you want me to do the PAF?
Go down the line.
Yeah, let's talk about stuff and then we'll get to this.
Okay.
That way we'll get them up to speed on some things that are going on that they need to know, that I want them to know and want the public to know.
Yeah.
And
Feel free.
then we'll go through the sewer use study, because they're going to hear, this is the first time they're going to hear about it, this is not going to be the last time.
Right.
They'll hear about it.
And as I talk and I go from subject to subject, feel free to just stop me, ask a question, whatever you want. I'll go wherever you really want me to go. So I wrote down CMEC first. So I was going to just mention a couple of things going on at CMEC. One of the biggest things that happened was the member delegation got together and actually made a distribution of equity. So this year's equity distribution was over $9 million. That was from profits in the last fiscal year. which isn't this calendar year, it's the last calendar year. So the member delegation actually distributed the last of the $9 million. We took about $2 million into Groton at the beginning of the year, and we took just another $2.4 million into Groton, into the rate stabilization fund. It goes into the funds at CMEC and gets allocated into the electric bills, one way or the other. So that's actually a big deal, and I just thought it was important to know that. And if you actually look at the distributions, in 2013 there was 5.7 million distributed to the owners. In 2014 there was 3.79 million distributed to the owners. We didn't take equity out of CMEC in 2015. One of the reasons that number for 2016 was a little bit larger. Prior to 2013, CMEC did not make equity distributions such as this. So the profitability at CMEC has gone up multifold in the last couple of years. That's distributed to the owners by percent ownership, which is based on electrical volumes. That all makes sense?
And our current ownership is?
It's about 57%.
So ownership,
if you include Bosra.
right. Ownership has its privileges. This is one of the things that CMEC does for us, is that it is a profit-making entity, and therefore ownership for us, when it comes time for profit sharing, we get our share based on a percentage of ownership.
Right.
Not based on two people sitting at the table with two people represented by each of the other five utilities.
Right. So we own 57%. That means we own 57% of the stock. So you basically get profits from CMEC by purchasing lower price power. In the way that the CMEC, and we benchmark that, is based on what the typical standard offer is from Eversource, for the Eversource customer, which in the same same years since 2013 is actually $155 million of saving compared to the typical standard offer, the rate that an Eversource customer uses. That's on top of the $9 million cash that's been put in everybody's checkbooks. So it's just something to think about. It's the way the company runs. It's sitting there a way to take equity, invest it in innovative things, and make money. So it runs as a business. It's not just a buying cooperative.
Director, you said that that $2 million that went into which fund?
The CMEC equity distributions get allocated. You can take it as a check, right into the income statement of the utility. You can take it right into the rate stabilization fund and bring it back in through the utility bills, and by lowering the cost of power. There's multiple ways to take that cash.
So I guess my question was in the beginning of the year, what did we do with that? You said we got it.
In the beginning of the year, we put that money right into the rate stabilization fund.
Okay.
So the profits that CMEC makes that we put into the rate stabilization fund can be used to bring down the bills.
Mm-hmm.
In a minute, when I talk about the Groton Utility Commission meeting, one of the things that we've recently discussed there is basically rate increases. Rate increases for Groton Utilities over the next 3 years that we're currently anticipating at 2%, 2%, and 1%. We're trying to look at the rate increases based on a 3-year thing, so 3-year term, so we're consistent and we're actually running the business so that we're not, oh, we got to go run out, we did the budget and we got to do a 5% increase or something. No, it's supposed to be consistent. You're supposed to know what you're getting. The 2%, 2%, 1% rate increase for GU is going to be, actually the bottom line of your electric bill is going to be going down slightly based on the profitability of CMAC.
Okay, thank you.
So the other things that came up at the last directors meeting was they approved the operating budget for CMEC, which includes the cost of the money to run the projects that generate that equity and that profitability, and also the operating budget of the mothership, the company. You know, the personnel salaries, all the money spent to keep everything going. And then also they went final with the governance committee's appointments to subcommittees. As you guys know, here on your week off that no one's watching you on TV, you're not off. So all the work of the machine is done behind in all the subcommittees before it ever gets there. The Budget and Finance Committee at CMEC runs through multiple meetings before the budget gets brought up to the board. And as a general rule, if you want to know the details, you talk to someone on that subcommittee. I happen to be on Governance Committee, and I'm pretty good at the governance side, or learning, because I'm so weak in governance, I was asked if I could be put on governance, and now I'm becoming a specialty at governance, hopefully over the next, the past year and the upcoming year. Any questions on the subcommittees or anything? I don't know if you recognize the names, but if you have any questions, guys can write me, and I'll talk about it or let you know anytime.
How many subcommittees are there other than governance?
There's joint audit, which I know David's actually on he's chairperson. David is basically our CFO for the
David Clark.
utility company. He's actually the chairperson of joint audit. There's the joint budget. There's compensation and policy. There's governance, legislative, and risk management. So all the projects and all the investments go through the joint risk management committee before it happens. And the reason they're joint is you have CMEC, which is doing the power and the investments there, but CMEC also, the board runs Transco, which is a transmission distribution company for the high voltage lines, the big high lines, like what you see entering into Buddington. That answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
Just a side note, now we'll go into the GU meeting. On Saturday, they had a tree lighting in Mystic. We donated a tree to the Mystic Chamber of Commerce, and the Mystic Chamber of Commerce, with help from the Mystic Shipyard, actually put up a tree that GU donated there. Keith, the mayor actually asked me to review a little bit of what the budget numbers are. So I was trying to figure out how to do this in a way that kept it really high level, kind of simple. So ask me questions or direct me as you want. I'm going to try to do this.
And this presentation is going to be, it's a little bit more complicated because it's a utility, but it's one of the things that we're going to start doing is I'm going to be providing you monthly with financial statements from the departments. That way you can be briefed. One of the things that I committed to during the bond rating review was that one of our new policies is going to include informing you guys of what monthly of where we are financially. That way you'll have a better understanding of the budget, a better understanding overall, and a better understanding of each of the departments. So the utility is one of the departments, although their budget is a little more complicated, but I've asked Director Gaudet to give a shot at something high level. Councilor Russ.
Can we get these in writing from now on? I know with numbers for me, if I can look at them, it makes far more sense.
The financial statements that I'm going to give you for everybody else will come in writing, and then next time that I get them from him, we'll get them. I can get those to you so that they're available to you we'll get them to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we just got to decide what version, if there's a nice simple version or if you actually want all the budget sheet, the income sheets.
Right, I'm trying to keep-
None of this is a secret. You can have.
Right, this is all public information. I'm balancing keeping you informed and not overwhelming you with information. That's the balance that I'm walking, the tightrope that I'm trying.
Yeah, and the Utility Commission spends quite a bit of time on the numbers in each meeting. It ends up being a focal point of the numbers. Why? Okay, so if you look at the electric company, so this is year to date, the end of October 31st. And remember, the utility is driven by revenues, and then we have expense. 80% of the expense on the electric company is buying the wholesale cost of power. So the operating budget that we have influence over is only 20%. The rest is basically power. So revenues to date are actually down 5.6%. 5.6% on our budget is $1.1 million. So that's a bad thing. That means it wasn't as cold as it's supposed to be. Operating expenses is actually also down 5%, which is good. It means if we don't see a lot of money coming in, we're trying to be frugal. That down 5% on operating expenses is not $940,000. That means net income from operations is down $181,000 or 11% year to date. So revenues were down a little bit more than what our expenses went down.
Can you repeat that operating revenue number?
Operating
Or the revenue, I guess.
on the revenue side,
Mhm.
it's down 1.1 million
Gotcha.
total. And I'm not giving you the aggregates because total budget year to date is just about 20 million.
Gotcha.
Now, we've had a couple of things happen on the side that we decided not to put into the operating budget. We've actually put in streetlights that we've used energy conservation funds for, which brought money into the utility. We've actually had a couple of things that are like extraordinary, which have brought extra money into the utility on the order of magnitude of $850,000. So if you look at the profit, if you look at the net income of the utility, it's actually up year to date $675,000 from plan. So we're up 50% on net income. So sometimes if you don't see the numbers looking good, you look at other ways to perform. That's what I might say. But it means that the electric company actually isn't doing so bad, even though the weather hasn't been cooperating with volumes. In the actual meetings, there's a line of questioning coming from the public at times that are very concerned about solar and fuel cells' effect on the utility. The way we've designed a majority of the green power or distributed power that the utility has is that it doesn't affect income. They're treated as a pass-through for the utility. We treat, if you put up solar panels, you get a credit of the exact amount that we would have paid CMEC for the power. So instead, we just pay the homeowner the power at the same cost it would have cost us from CMEC if you have solar panels. That's why in Groton, it's not quite as cost effective to have solar panels as it is in the Eversource area. If that makes sense. People ask that all the time. Is that simple enough or too much or too little for electric? Yep.
Councilor Rusk.
At some point, you talked about $850,000 of increased revenue.
Yep.
Where's that coming from?
That's coming from the conservation funds that we're using to pay for the LED streetlight upgrade.
Thank you.
As you know, on your bill, there's a small adder that everybody pays that is supposed to be to increase the efficiency. And a lot of homeowners put in for energy efficiency audits, and if you haven't done it, you should do it. LED light bulbs, they come in and they spend a bunch of money, energy conservation money, on making you more efficient to use less power and less energy to heat your house. The electric's very interesting. You try to put yourself out of business when you're doing the right thing.
Councilor Rusk?
I know this is a little off topic, but you mentioned the street lights, and we've been questioned, at least I've been questioned recently, about whether or not the city is changing street lights. How many of what percentage of our street lights have been changed to LED? Do we have that number?
To date,
Percentage would be very,
I'm going to shoot 10%.
yeah.
Okay.
And
are we?
I can find out exact, but what's happened is, if you actually, we actually have 80% of the linemen traveling today. We have 3 guys on call. The rest are in an airplane, either coming up from St. Thomas today or going to St. Thomas today, because we're doing a crew change out.
Okay.
So we're down like 10 guys.
But to further address that issue, it is an ongoing project, and they are working on it every day, except for when they get emergent call. When they get calls, then you got to address the calls.
Right.
But if they're out working on that, they are actively working on the plan to replace all the streetlights in our operating area. That's one of the things that you and the town manager met several months ago, and you gave him the plan and talked to him, because there was a motion, although premature, to hold the money back if we didn't change out the lights. Now, we had planned on changing out the lights all along, so there was some misinformation that was out there. So they do have a plan, and you can see the lights right around here outside. Those have been changed. I noticed the lights tonight outside my house. Those are on my street, rather, not just outside my house, on the street, were changed. And not because it's a street that I live. I just want to make that
The crews actually went around and did zones. They did zones, and they came up with what would be the inefficient and effective way to do the lights. So they've come up with a route, zones, and they happen to start on Eastern Point.
Yeah.
And they've been working their way up this way through the city, because the idea is that they're trying to put them in as cost effectively as possible. That way they can rig up a couple of trucks and just kind of work their way right down the street and do it real quick, fill up the rear pickup with all the old lights, and change it out. So they're trying to be effective.
Plant Street's been done, Tyler's been done, that whole neighborhood, Soundview, what's the other one, Round Hill, that's been done. I don't know if they've gotten down to Shore or Meach yet. I haven't done the drive-by at night. I need to go do that. But I know I saw guys down on Plant Street when I went to check the painting out for the
Par 4.
for Par 4.
Yeah, and we're running slow because of the lack of staff.
Councilor Russell.
When would be an estimated time for this to be done?
Originally, it was by the end of winter or before winter.
Oh, so
But we failed.
we also went to St. Thomas.
Right. So I actually can't answer that right now until.
But we're not looking a year out. We're looking.
No, it should. We'll have it definitely done in this fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Because we took the income, we want to take the expense.
Okay, anyone else on this? Okay, please continue.
The other topic that has come up in the budget, the utility commission meetings, is the rate increases for both electric companies, Basra and Groton. So as mentioned, there's actually, as we roll out the cost of service studies, the cost of service studies are trying to put the appropriate cost that a customer makes the utility spend on a very specific customer be true to what the rate is supposed to truly reflect the cost caused by that customer. In the old days, you may have large industry financing or lowering the cost and funding the residential rate, or you might have residential going the other way. Traditionally here, I believe it was large industry financing the residential. What we're trying to do is come to terms with the cost of service, and over time, as prices and tariffs change, bring the costs to be what they actually are equally. That helps with economic development as related to industry, and it also is very fair to the residents. So Groton Utilities, so you have three things that cause rates to need to be increases. One is target operating income, one is minimum cash reserve, and the third is actually debt coverage ratio. So GU for Groton, we're going to be going in and actually having, asking the Utility Commission to schedule a public hearing and then go through an ordinance change that changes the rates for the next 3 years of 2%, 2%, and 1%. That's driven by debt coverage ratio. For Basra Light and Power, that ordinance will also run through this council, is actually a 3%, 3%, and 3%. And that's being driven by the minimum cash reserves. I know I'm saying a lot.
How do we determine minimum cash reserves, and are we in the green zone or black, so to speak?
I know what you do. To answer you, I'd need David or this guy to do that. But he has actually a formula that he puts onto the balance sheet and actually onto the budget numbers as they're going. And he says that your cash reserves need to be, we use as a general rule of thumb, days operating cash, X amount of days. And I know Basra runs it, when we pay our electric bill in Basra, there's basically, $10,000 in the checking account. So there's maybe 30 days runtime. For Groton, days cash reserve days cash on hand is 256. And I believe his target's 180.
Yeah, I think 180 is what he said to me.
I believe that's what his target is. So I may have answered your question. Sometimes I can talk myself into the answer.
Sounds good.
Anything else on this? Okay, go ahead to the next one.
I was going to flip to water.
Yep.
Same thing. I was going to use the same numbers. Total revenue is down $477,000 or 12% year to date. That's off year to date of $4 million budget. Operating expenses are down 20% or $682,000. Earnings are $204,000 or 28% over budget.
One more time. What was the last one?
So earnings are $204,000 over budget year to date, which is 28% to the good.
Thank you.
One of the reasons that the bottom line in the water is good is because we've been taking a few rate increases as we go to generate the extra cash to put into a savings account to use to help pay for the new water plant when it comes online. So the numbers should look fairly decent for water.
So for those of you that have been here for a while, this is part of the plan. This is a planned thing to increase the rates up front. Instead of getting in a rate shock at the end, you gradually raise the rates so that you're raising the money to pay for the construction that we're going to do. And that helps. Does that make sense? Okay.
And then because I was trying to just flip through real quick, you guys can critique more or less, shut up, every 3 months or whatever you want. And then I figured coming soon, you're going to actually see as an action item out of the Utility Commission coming to here to be resolved is the issuance of a purchase order very soon for their operations offices. Got basically it's currently almost priced, but what we're going to do is issue a purchase order for a non-bonded capital. It's basically an upgrade over there to fit more people in less space, in the same space. I don't know how many
And
apply.
that's for current occupants of operations.
Right. We're just space strapped everywhere. That's similar to what we did over here with customer service. This place is currently on hold. Over there isn't on hold.
Okay.
Now, I'm not going to read this whole thing. I'm going to flip through the pages and say high level what it says. The mayor's been very involved and can add where he wants. So the current study is to look at taking the PAF out of the tax base and moving it into an enterprise account to be managed very similar to the way we manage the water fund. The water enterprise account is not a profitable account. It's not done to take profits and to make income or return to the city. It's done just to create like a lockbox. All the fees that are charged for water go into the lockbox, and all the costs to supply water come out of that lockbox account. So it creates an enterprise account just for that purpose. The PAF account would be set up exactly the same, where we'd move, what's envisioned is we would move the money, the revenue onto the water bill. That would come in and fund an enterprise account to use to pay for staff, expenses, and capital improvements to keep the equipment going or upgrade the system. Both the collection system, the pump stations, and the plant.
One of the challenges that we have now is the fact that the Water Pollution Control Authority falls under the municipality. It is limited by the amount of taxes that we can bring in and charge. So there are projects that are not being accomplished because we don't want to raise taxes. If we move this into an enterprise zone, it is now that our tax rate, this will come out from the taxes. So you should see a lowering of the taxes. It will go into an enterprise zone where basically it's going to be self-funded, and we're still trying to determine what the fee is going to be. But the fee should be somewhere around the same or maybe a little lower. And then what that allows the WPCA to do is to have, they're going to put money aside in enterprise accounts, and what that's going to allow them to do is build so that they can accomplish projects. And there are projects that need to be done down there that have been put off because money has been tight for taxes. So now what you're going to do is electric, water, and sewer will all be under the utility, will all be run the same way. Will all be run the same way, and will all be financed the same way through these accounts and through user fees. Does that kind of sort of make sense? Councilor Russell, whoops.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, and for those people who are a little bit concerned about this, by it coming out of your taxes and going into a user fee, everyone will now be paying that user fee,
Right.
including those who are tax exempt currently.
Right. This originally started, it was referred to when I was a counselor before I was even deputy mayor. It was referred to the finance committee to look for revenue streams, because one of the things we identified is there were tax exempt entities. Right? That's the right word I want to use. Tax exempt entities that were not paying any taxes, and yet they were using our services, using the sewer, those kind of things. And one of the things that there has been an ad valorem tax that people have done. We were late on that. We decided we were going to do that for the non-taxable entities. And we're very careful to use non-taxable entities instead of non-profit. Non-profits are things like daycare centers and churches and things like that. Non-taxable entities includes the state and the town and the city. So that broadens that a little bit. And then when I brought this to the council to talk about it, then the question was, well, can we expand this? And so we looked at it, and the recommendation rather, was made. The decision ultimately be yours, but the recommendation was to go with complete sewer usage fees for everybody. So there's going to be winners and losers, if you will, and I hate using that term, but let me try to explain that. For those people that have never paid taxes, or those entities that have never paid taxes, never paid any kind of fees, this is going to be a new fee for them, so they're going to consider themselves a loser. For most residential users, you're probably going to pay less or similar to what you paid for the taxes. The problem with taxes is that the taxes is based on the value of your home, not based on the number of people that are using the sewer. For example, a family that is just a mom and dad, and that's all they are, and their taxes are $100,000, if suddenly they have, or excuse me, their taxes is based on $100,000, suddenly they have 1 and 2 children, then, and their taxes is still $100,000, that's still based on that. So they're using the sewers more, but they're not being taxed anymore. So this is a fee that's based on water usage. One of the challenges is, what about, are you going to get into averaging?
We can get into anything and everything.
Okay. One of the questions is, well, what about if I own a pool, or what if I have raised bed gardens, and I'm watering them a bunch? Am I going to be penalized for that? One of the things we're looking at doing is normalizing the amount over the winter period, using winter months to normalize, because that's a fairly steady, either fall or winter, because that's a steady period, as opposed to if the water goes into the pool, it doesn't go through the sewer. If the water goes through the into my raised bed gardens, it doesn't go to the sewer. So we're trying to be fair about that, and that's one of the things that we're looking at as well. So there's been a lot of thought put into this, and one of the things we're looking to do is roll this out at the same time the new budget comes out. So it's either going to roll out 1 July 2018, or it's not going to roll out until 1 July 2019, because it's more important to me to be right than it is to be fast. So we are working on a timeline to meet 1 July 2018. We think we can do that. But there are, we got to you got to back out the time it takes for ordinances to be approved and those kind of things. That takes a couple months, and so all those things, and there is a timeline in here that Director Gaudet will go through at the end. So I'll turn it back over to you. I realize I talked a bunch, but
That was good. You hit just about every subject, high level, which if you kept up,
Quite clear.
it's actually there. So actually, if you turn to page 3, you can see we're checking off the list of what we're doing. So when Raftillis got the current budget, they looked at the current salaries, they looked at the expense, and they looked at the plant value, and they said, well, this value should have about this much capital injected into it to be renewing itself every X amount of years. So a cost of service study is actually a very healthy way of trimming your budget up to know that you've got the right amount in the right buckets. So using them to create a standard on the rate is kind of important. And one of the first slides you're going to see, so part of it is finance related, and you'll see we're going through the list. And the second part is non-finance, which is how do you get it? How do you get it there? It's currently, we don't believe it's referred to in the charter, so it's not a charter issue, but the sewage fees and the way it runs does come under an ordinance. So we do believe that ordinance needs to be changed. In sense where we'd be creating a rate structure similar to the utility, we believe we would use the utilities rate change process, which means that the WPCA or the Utility Commission, I'm going to use them both interchangeable for a second, but the WPCA would say, yes, we think this is a good idea, we'd like to move it ahead, we'd know a lot of the details, this group will know all these details, and they'll go, we'd like to schedule a public hearing to discuss it. That would be scheduled. After the public hearing, they would decide to move forward with the ordinance change to support the effort or not, which would create the rate. And that would go into the ordinance change procedure, which would go to a first read and a second reading. And the rate can't change until the first of the month after the second reading, if I got that right. Without Devon, might be marginal, but that's about what it is. So if you look at, so we're working through the non-finance side details. So page 6 actually says what he has included in the budget to date. And it may or may not be exactly what the mayor said. This still has to be refined. So the operating budget would include a portion of the utilities overhead cost. So, for example, if it costs $2 million to run the wastewater now, as part of the utility, it would take on its financial burden out of customer service, because the calls will come in to complain about the bills to customer service. This is high, this is low, I filled my pool. Is it very similar to the way we service ledgered water system in sewage system. We actually service that. That's part of on the ledgered system, the way we do it up there. So there's actually an overhead that comes from that, and a cost to actually get them onto the North Star system we use to support the billing system. Actually, their service fees will go up to incorporate this into the bill. So that 570 accounts for all of that envisioned overhead that would just be housed there. So in effect, when you look at the budget, it looks like it's higher than lower. There are actually fees already experienced by the utility getting reallocated fairly, so that they reflect actually what it costs to do the job. They included $4 million in capital projects annually. That's the cost that we currently don't get to move forward in the CIPs through the budget process. There isn't a lot of money there to move forward with all that. The one project that has been done recently is the wastewater treatment upgrade, which was about $6 million. That was about $6 million. That was bonded. Those bonded costs are actually added in here as that existing debt service. So that payment table has been put into that model. And then beyond that, they're actually, he's designing it so there's $125,000 annually to go into a rainy, I'll call it a rainy day. It's a reserve fund. So that if something comes up, you actually have money in the checkbook to actually pay for an overage in the budget. Yep.
Would this increase or different allocation of funding, how would that affect maintenance? If I'm correct in my thinking, I know that there's probably a lot of updating and repair work that needs to be done to our existing sewer system throughout the city. Would some of that extra income be used for that purpose rather than having to go out for bonding?
The revenue to pay for the bonding would come out directly out of this account. It would be in there. What he did currently in the rates that he's proposing, he has a low, mid, and high rate level, and we have to look at the exact details of what's inside that. I believe it's how much we put aside annually for capital improvements. In his recommended version that he was showing us, he was actually putting $4 million a year. That's about $4 million more a year than what we're putting aside to do upgrades like that now.
Right.
If that makes sense. Did I say that right?
Yep.
Okay. The way they're looking at doing the cost allocation is taking, I'm going to pick 4 months, November, December, January, February's bill, to make a baseline usage rate, extrapolating that over what a typical, for you, your house, would use for a whole year, and using that to standardize the bill so that the monthly fee would be the exact same based on that usage.
And will that be reassessed annually?
It would get trued up annually based on that actual usage, and it may or may not address seasonal owners that are gone. There's not a ton of seasonal owners, we don't think, but there may be a couple that maybe there's a little minimum fee that's charged no matter what. But what that would allow is if you wash your car, water your garden, fill a pool, none of that usage would go on to that typical usage. It would be a typical non-summer usage. And what that would do on the revenue side, when I was reading you the revenue out of the electric division and the water division, it's all volume based. So your income statements vary a lot based on how much people actually use. So this past year, it rained enough that not a lot of people used water. The year before, people were using water everywhere. We had lots of extra revenue. This year we didn't. We were short revenue. That affects your whole cash flow issue. So the idea is to simplify the income on the sewerage account by standardizing the rate to a fixed monthly fee. That way you know exactly what your revenue is every month. And the numbers should follow right through because of that. It's actually the latest, greatest thing they're recommending in a way to do this. Because what happens is if 85% of the sewerage costs are fixed, whether everybody goes out and flushes their toilet an extra 20 times today. It didn't drive the costs up substantially. The costs are the same, so you might as well standardize your revenue to be the same also. That makes sense.
Councilor Russell?
So the question we'll get is the average homeowner, are they going to look, they shouldn't expect to have a huge increase in their rate when you take away their taxes.
What will be brought here are graphs and estimated costs for the typical resident, the typical industry, and maybe specific industrial customers are left off, and we can address them one-on-one. But what's anticipated is the typical residents' costs for sewerage will be less than what they currently pay on their property tax.
Okay.
So,
And that's what I'm shooting for. Because one of the things we talked about in the very beginning was that you should see your taxes go down, but there is going to be a fee. And for residents, they don't care. I can call it a tax, I can call it a fee, I can call it popcorn, but if it's coming out of their pockets, it feels the same.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I am sensitive to is if I say we're going to lower the taxes, then we're not going to jack it up in fees. So we may have to compromise on initially how much money is set aside in reserve fund, not reserve fund, how much is set aside, like the $4 million now, that may go something less, or we talk about we're not going to need an increase in 3 years, we may have to have an increase after 2 years. And that way, you still got to have operating costs, but I want to ease this in so that we minimize the burden on the taxpayer. That's very important to me. And I know it is to you as a council, as you guys have stated so in the past.
and similar to the way we are doing the cost of service studies for the electric and water companies, we're trying to stabilize for 3 years. So the thought is if we're coming out with a new rate for sewerage, that it would, on the last bullet on page 7, is we'd set rates and we'd try to keep the rate the same for the first 3 years. The rate would be the same for the first 3 years. That would be the way we'd roll it out. Or it would be determined that it's going to be this much the first year, this much the second year, and this much the third year, and that's the way we'd roll it out. But the idea is we don't want to make this a trick. This isn't, a flim-flam where we're trying to move money out of one pocket and into the other. This is supposed to be very honest and very truthful, and this is what we're doing, this is what the rate is, this is the cost impacts, and this is, what we're gonna do for 3 years to make that come true.
And frankly, this method, we are lagging in this. If you look at other states, other municipalities within the state of Connecticut, we are behind in implementing this. Lots of people have implemented rates. Councilor Heath.
One of the other reasons that I heard initially for going in this direction was also that we could apply for additional grants. So are you able to talk about what kind of effort will be made in that direction?
We've heard mixed, going both ways on that we can get grants and we can't, but the general thought and the general DPH guidance is that you need to be on a rate structure and off a tax basis in order to be able to apply for grants. The trick that some municipalities do is some are partially tax structure, partially rates, and when it gets in the middle, that's where it's gray. However, that is what the goal would be. So we've actually only done the first phase of a multi-phase sewage plant upgrade set of projects. So the rest of the phases is still to go, and we can put in for the grants as they're available. Although with the state condition, I'm not always thinking there's going to be lots of money. We did really well in water. That we should feel very lucky. And then on page 8, this is actually his annual reserve fund contributions. They want a target of 180 days cash on hand. So, Councilor Heath, that was your question. Raftillis is not the same as the other company that did the electric, but I have a feeling it's very similar, standard. Other than that, we need to bring this out, advertise it, talk to everybody about it, make sure there's no potholes sitting there for us, make sure that we're following the governance correctly to do the modifications to the ordinance right, and that we believe we're safe with the charter, but we're going to have the attorneys lend opinion on all the things that we're doing to try to make sure we're not leaving any stone unturned. And the current thought is that the WPCA would move in effect to the Utilities Commission, and Utility Commission items, as appropriate, come up to this group for approval anyway. So you would still be involved, and the idea is to get you more involved in some of the thoughts, and at least in the general rule, going on at the Utility Commission in here as much as you guys want it. That was page 12. And then page 13 is a list of questions that we're going through to make this happen. And you still are yet to see the graphs of what the anticipated impact is for everybody, because the rate hasn't been solidified. We only got to this point with the mayor 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
Questions, comments, or any of the details I skipped that you want more of?
Any other questions or comments?
No, sir.
Okay. Then we'll move on.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if you could stay just a couple minutes, just in case.
Sure. Here or over there?
Over there. Okay, the last thing is referral number 1, appointments. The first appointment we have is that I bring before you is the Board of Ethics is short a member during the ethics complaint. Mary Kelly passed away, and they were in the middle of doing the ethics complaint. They didn't want to bring somebody in order to try to read them in and get them up to speed. So they did it with a committee of 4. The challenge with that is the way their rules are written right now is they have to have 4 out of 5 votes, and since they only had 4 people, they had to have unanimous votes for every single thing they had. So now that is completed, I've been asked to provide a recommendation. The recommendation that I have before you is Barbara Dutton. Her information is in front of you. She's been involved in the community. She's been involved in the community for a long time. The members, most of the members, I think there's one member that is not familiar with her, but most of the other members do know her. So if she is acceptable to you, I'd like to move this to the meeting. I'd like someone to make a motion to move it to the meeting of 12/4.
I would make that motion to
Okay.
move it to the beginning of
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carried unanimously. The next one, let me lead off with this. Earlier today, I received a resignation letter from Councilor He. It says, Dear Mayor Hedrick, Town Clerk Deb Patrick, and City of Groton councilors, due to my election to Groton's Town Council, I hereby submit my resignation, effective after tonight's committee of the whole meeting. It has been an honor and a privilege to have served with all of you. Kind regards, Conrad He. So I'll be the first one to congratulate you and to thank you for
Do we
the
have to
service.
accept that?
Well, we don't have to accept it, but that seat's going to be empty.
Problematic.
So I would like, it is problematic. So I would like to thank you for your service. You've been on the council for, what, 3 years? And your contribution has been great, and I appreciate the ability to serve with you as a counselor, as deputy mayor, and then now as the mayor. So thank you for everything that you've done.
Thank you, sir.
And that brings us to the last motion, which is Gwen Depot. Gwen, if you could come up.
Let's see something.
I bring before you tonight Gwen. I have brought her in front of the Democratic City Committee. Democratic City Committee recommends Gwen, and she, for those of you that have known her, I think most of you guys met her during the election. There was one thing that needed to be resolved, and that is she was unaffiliated. She changed her part. She submitted the application to change party affiliation to Democrat. So she is now a Democrat. I need to call and verify that because it was given to someone, it was given to the right office. I'm going to verify that it has been received and has been adjudicated. But with that, what we'll do is once she answers any questions you may have, I'll ask you to move her nomination to 12/4/2017 as well. Do you have any questions for Gwen? Like I said, I think most of you have met her. Councilor Sheffield?
Hi, Gwen, welcome. What's your background, I guess, as far as, for civic duties that you've done before?
Well, I mostly kind of didn't get involved. I decided in May to get involved as much as possible when the whole issue of the city and town and all the stuff that was going on. And also I've known Jamal for a very long time, and I told him, I would do whatever to help him win because I thought he'd be a great asset to the council. So I know back in May, it had been brought up to possibly in the future run, but I haven't previously run for anything, or, I've mostly kind of just observed a lot.
And it's if we go back and we look at our histories, everybody starts somewhere, right? Not everybody has served on committees or boards or commissions. Matter of fact, it is not uncommon for the platform or the council to be the first position. What's that?
I said I can attest to that.
Okay. Well, I was going to say there are a couple of you that are familiar with that. Some have been appointed, some have run for the first time and were elected, and that is a good thing. Councilor Rusk.
Hi, thanks for being here. Can you share your background in the city and what your hopes are for the future of the city?
I grew up in the city. I've lived in the city probably all but 4 years of my life, so like 29 years. I have owned a home in the city for the last 11. My husband is from Ledyard, and we moved to Groton. He works at EB, so we are kind of stuck here. I've been involved in some, I know a lot of people in the town community and the city community, and I've kind of been involved in political conversation with a lot of the people in the town, and like I said, I've kind of observed a lot, and I think that within the last couple of years, I've been really hopeful that the town and the city would work together because we have such a great community, and that's another thing that in May really drew me to this particular group of people, because the continued kind of message was we have such a great city and town, we have so much to offer, to work together to kind of get the residents more involved and get people to know all the things that we have to offer. And I thought it was so well presented, and growing up here, I know that to be the case, and I lived in Ledyard for a while. You're kind of really secluded there. It's not the same like community kind of feeling that you have in the city. So I really like the way that we have so many events and the beach and things to offer in it. I think it presents a lot of opportunities for community involvement.
So you want to be part of it?
I do.
Careful what
That's
you
good.
wish for.
Be careful with that. Any other questions or comments? Gwen? Okay, hearing none, I need a motion to move her appointment. Correction, yes. Appointment. It's not, appointment. Okay, move her appointment to the council meeting of 12/4/2017.
I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries unanimously. Okay, we have no executive sessions, so therefore we have no comments from executive session. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
I'll move we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.